Every week, I produce and host a music industry podcast called Backstage Pass Podcast, brought to you by Tommen, who are Europe's biggest musical instrument retailer. It's a podcast. It's also a video. It's a video podcast. Producing the podcast has been a learning curve, from thinking about branding and what kind of microphones we're going to use and how the logistics are going to work with recording visual and audio, and how I'm going to edit that together into a piece of content that is interesting and engaging and entertaining and informative for the viewers and the listeners. On that note, I want to share with you my process in how I produce these video podcasts. For a more detailed version of how to produce your own video podcast, click the link in the description box below. I've provided a how-to guide and I hope you find it really useful. For the Backstage Pass podcast, first things first, we had to decide upon the name, the content that would come to define the podcast, and the types of guests that we would love to have on each episode. There are a few initial questions that needed answering, like what are we going to be talking about? What are the discussion topics? Who do we want to speak to? What kind of conversation do we want to have? What conversations need to be had and need to be had more? What do we want to shine a light on? What do we want it to look like? What do we want it to sound like? All of these things needed to be defined so that we had a solid foundation to build upon with each new episode. So let's get into the techie side of things. I'll briefly go over my current setup so you can see how everything's working. I have a ring light here to my front right side, and then on my front left side there is an LED light that's bouncing light off the wall to give a bit of a softer light, and behind me I have another LED light that's giving blue light out just to backlight me a bit, and also I love blue. Once everything is lit nicely and you can see my face clearly and I'm in focus, I film myself having the conversation with the guest, and I do this by having a phone just here to the side of the camera. We have these conversations via Zoom, which is pretty reliable. I like the app. So whilst I'm having the conversation, I'm filming myself. The camera is capturing audio as well, but I'm also recording my audio separately to give a really clear signal. I'm in a fairly small room when I film and record these podcasts, so there's a little bit of acoustic treatment at the back, but there's also some non-professional things which help to stop the sound bouncing off the wall and giving a really noisy audio signal through my microphone. These things are carpet, decorative canvases, and general objects made of material, and also a curtain to this side. Now that I'm using the new Shure MV7 microphone, I can customize my settings, so I can completely bypass my little fancy interface if I want to and go straight into the laptop via USB cable. There's also an option to make an analog recording if you plug in via XLR cable. When plugged in via USB, I just use the Shure Motive app to get everything sounding just right. I can customize my EQ, my compression, and basically control the overall tone. Dark and moody, and the bright tone. Bright, happy, joyous, light. I can even plug my headphones right into the back of the microphone for direct headphone monitoring to check how everything's sounding. I import my audio and my video files into a software called Final Cut. I sync them up and I start editing. I ask my guests to record themselves separately from the camera and film themselves locally as well, so that all of the files are the highest quality possible. It sounds like I'm asking a lot of my guests to do this. I know a lot of podcasts record and film via Zoom within the app. It's a really quick and easy way to do it, but I feel like doing it like this provides the highest quality video and the highest quality audio that I can get, and it's a beautiful thing. My guest setup doesn't need to be too fancy. Most people have a phone that films full HD video now, which is great and perfect, and most of the guests end up recording their audio through a USB mic or through a microphone in their headphones. In terms of cutting the conversation down, I like the conversation to flow as naturally as possible when listening back to the audio and watching the video. And so I only cut out any pauses or, focus on the highlights of the conversation. I don't like to edit it to within an inch of its life, because I feel like sometimes you can lose the flow of a normal, natural conversation. I record my audio into a music production software called Logic Pro. There are many other music production softwares available. This is just the one that I like best. I mix and master both my audio and the guest audio in there. In terms of the mix, there's not a whole lot going on. There's some light EQ. I tried to just bring out the warm, intimate tones of a natural voice. And there's a bit of compression. There's some de-esser to take away some of the sibilants and some denoising, but not a crazy amount. I don't want it to sound over-processed. I want it to sound natural and intimate. I will say, though, that Isotope do an incredible plugin, which I use, the RX7. I believe there's a new version, the RX8. It's just an amazing, amazing plugin for taking away noise from an audio signal, especially for a normal speaking voice like this. I will often pick up sounds from the road, which is just behind that curtain, or sometimes a bit of fan noise from my laptop, and I can always get rid of it without affecting the other frequencies too much. It's an incredible plugin. I would highly recommend it. Link below if you want to check it out. After I've processed the audio file in Logic, I export a single WAV file and import that WAV file back into the Final Cut project, sync it up with the video, do a quick color grade so that it makes a few colors pop, but nothing too crazy. I want it to be quite natural. And then I export the video and ta-da! We have one high quality audio file of the podcast and one high quality video file. The audio is hosted on streaming sites like Spotify and the video is hosted on YouTube. And that's it. So there it is, a quick overview of how I produce video podcasts. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like a more detailed version of that, you can free download a how to produce your own video podcasts. If you do create a video podcast off the back of reading that guide, please share it with me on socials because I'd love to see it. Thanks for watching. Check out the podcast, download the guide, and I will see you soon.